I remember the moment my fingers trembled as I broke the turquoise wax seal on the thick envelope. The letter arrived from Quinn Archer's law office on a lazy Sunday afternoon, sunlight slanting through the oak window frames. I, Addison Pierce, could not believe I was about to inherit a legacy valued at $2,500,000, 0 cents. Roughly $2 million, 0 cents, lay tied up in the old family estate, and the remaining $500,000, 0 cents, sat in a restricted cash fund earmarked for preservation. The scent of parchment and metal hung in the air, stirring memories of long summer afternoons spent sketching with Grandma B on the veranda. That wax seal was more than legal protocol. It was a promise of long-buried stories waiting to surface. My heart pounded as I weighed the gravity of the responsibility ahead. Could I honor her wishes and protect this heritage? The phone's ring cut through my thoughts, its insistent tone a reminder that decisions had to be made before dusk fell. Somewhere between duty and emotion, I stood on the brink of a new chapter. I grew up under the warm glow of Grandma B's porch light, where the evening air carried the sweet scent of baked apple pie cooling on a wire rack. Each summer, Beatrice Pierce would rise before dawn to sift flour and sugar in her heavy copper bowl, humming an old hymn she claimed kept the dough light. I remember sliding a fingertip through the sticky dough when she wasn't looking, grinning at the tiny white streak I left behind. Those mornings on the veranda, Rowan clutching her favorite rag doll, her bare feet pattering over weathered boards, are as vivid in my mind as the faded turquoise paint on the porch posts. Even back then, long before the will and the inheritance, our family's small artisan workshop where Grandma sold hand-painted ceramics and carved wooden figurines was a sanctuary. On its best days, that workshop brought in about $150,000, 0 cents annually. Just enough to cover bills and buy fresh apples for every pie. I still recall the day Grandma B pulled me aside, her fingers brushing mine as she presented a tiny acrylic painting of a willow tree she'd made just for me. She told me that art could be a bridge between past and future, a way of preserving moments when words failed. Watching her brush each leaf in gold and green, I felt the hush of something larger than ourselves, a legacy of creativity that I somehow inherited without ever asking. Rowan, only 6 then, sat beside us, her eyes wide as she traced the silhouette of the tree's drooping branches. Grandma laughed softly at Rowan's wonder, then winked at me. I, the budding artist, the one who would carry this torch. On lazy afternoons, after the summer heat reached its peak, I'd follow Grandma into her workshop. Sunlight filtered through dusty windows, illuminating rows of ceramic vases and hand-carved picture frames. She'd teach me how to glaze each piece, reminding me that patience was the secret ingredient. Whenever I rushed, the glaze cracked. When I waited, it bloomed into unexpected patterns. Good things, she'd say, come to those who learn to wait. Rowan preferred to chase the workshop cat, a stray tortoiseshell we'd affectionately named Pippin, but sometimes you'd find her curled on a stack of burlap sacks, sketching alongside me. Our small world wasn't without its complications, though. After Grandpa's sudden passing, Grandma married Tessa, my mother's childhood friend turned stepmother, hoping to keep the household afloat. Tessa was efficient and practical, but she never shared Grandma's warmth. I remember one argument, her voice tight as she insisted we raise prices on our hand-painted bowls to cover rising costs. Grandma's reply was soft but firm. This art belongs to everyone who touches it. I watched from the doorway as Tessa's jaw tightened, and in that moment sensed a tension that would linger for years. Even so, the love between Grandma B and me remained unshaken. At Christmas, she'd wrap my gifts in red and green plaid paper she'd sewn herself. including little envelopes of cash, usually $50, 0 cents, or $75, 0 cents, so I could buy art supplies at the local craft store. She kept a ledger of each gift, noting dates and amounts in cursive that swirled across the page. I treasured those entries as much as her laughter. Rowan, on the other hand, would peek into my stocking and squeal when she found a small stack of dollar bills taped inside, her grin wide enough to light the darkest winter night. When I graduated high school, Grandma B surprised me with a check for $1,000, 0 cents, toward my first art show. She circled the number 3 times and jotted a note, "For you and your dreams." I took that check to the county fairground and rented a modest booth, painting miniature landscapes and selling them for $25, 0 cents a piece. By the end of the weekend, I'd sold 40 pieces, netting $1,000, 0 cents after booth fees. It was a milestone not just for the sales, but for realizing that her faith in me could become something real. Rowan helped pack the unsold canvases into my battered portfolio case, her proud grin reminding me why I worked so hard. Those memories shaped the person I became, someone who valued passion over profit, heart over hustle. Yet even in our tight-knit clan, shadows gathered. My mother Lydia and father Elias balanced the family books, but I saw the strain in their shoulders during late-night budgeting sessions. They allocated $2,000, 0 cents a month for raw materials, and barely enough for food and gas. Tessa's insistence on cutting corners using cheaper clay, mixing smaller batches of glaze, became a source of friction. One evening, I overheard her tell Grandma, "We can't afford nostalgia." Grandma's reply, muffled from the kitchen, was heartbreakingly tender. "It's all we have." Through it all, Rowan and I held on to Grandma's lessons. We sketched every sunset together, she with her pink-framed crayon box, and I with my set of 10 acrylic paints. On the days Grandma felt weak, we whispered story fragments into her ear. Tales of willow trees that danced in moonlight, of wandering artists who found home in unexpected places. She'd smile and squeeze our hands, telling us that stories keep people alive long after they've gone. Looking back now, those warm afternoons and soft-spoken lessons feel like treasure maps, guiding me toward the inheritance that Quinn Archer's letter revealed. The quiver in my chest as I cracked that wax seal was not just fear of responsibility, but a longing to honor every laugh, every paint stroke, every secret recipe for apple pie. These memories, spun of sugar and light and family love, form the bedrock of my strength and the reason I cannot let this legacy slip away. With each brush of memory, I feel Grandma Bia's presence beside me on that porch, Rowan at my side, and even Tessa's stern voice fading into the background. This tapestry of moments woven from our shared heritage, our tiny workshops' whispered dreams, and our unwavering belief in art's enduring power, reminds me who I am. And it is from here, in the warm embrace of the past, that I will draw the courage to face the challenges ahead. I woke before dawn, restless, haunted by the urgent flag on Quinn Archer's email. By first light, I'd downloaded every document she sent. Draft amendments, meeting transcripts, and an undated email thread between Tessa and Quinn discussing liquidity solutions. My heart pounded as I realized how quietly the narrative had shifted. ASRIP, terms reconsidered without my knowledge. That morning, I found Quinn in her glass-walled office downtown. The city below hummed with life inside, tension crackled. I laid my evidence on the conference table, an unexecuted codicil from 2012, a 2015 margin note in Grandma Bia's handwriting forbidding any emergency withdrawal, and an email chain showing Tessa's request for a will review. Quinn's calm veneer cracked when I asked why Tessa had solicited her advice during Grandma's final illness. I warned her changes required your signature, Quinn admitted, voice low. But Tessa was worried about rising maintenance costs. She wanted options if the estate couldn't cover them. I pressed for clarity. Had any funds been moved? Quinn hesitated, then confirmed a discretionary line item of $200,000. 0 cents flagged for future decisions, but no formal amendment was ever executed. Relief and dread warred inside me. Tessa had almost redirected our inheritance by stealth, relying on informal notes and half-signed drafts. I thanked Quinn and left, clutching the truth like a talisman. Back home, the East Wing awaited its fate under peeling paint and sagging roof beams. I met with Claudia Mayers, an independent appraiser. She walked every room, notebook in hand, her expression grave. Restoration under historic preservation guidelines will cost $212,000, 0 cents, she reported. Those words echoed Tessa's earlier figures, almost to the dollar, a coincidence too precise to ignore. I emailed Claudia's report to Quinn, demanding to know why that discretionary fund existed if no change had passed. Quinn replied, I am pulling the firm's archived memos. I'll update you by Cobb. That evening, I called a family meeting. In our modest dining room, my parents Elias and Lydia sat across from me, Miles at the far end, Rowan perched on my lap. I walked them through the timeline, margin notes in Grandma's journal, Tessa's email to Quinn, the unexecuted fund, and Claudia's cost estimate. Finally, my father spoke. We need full transparency. We'll audit the accounts and secure an external estate counsel to oversee any amendments. My mother nodded, tears glinting in her eyes. Miles leaned forward, resolve in his 17-year-old gaze. And Rowan, though only 7, squeezed my hand as if she understood the stakes. That night, sleep eluded me again. I lay in the dark, listening to the distant hum of the refrigerator, replaying every sentence Tessa had spoken. We must offset expenses. I trust your judgment, Addison. Rental units will save the fund. Were those words offered in good faith or as cover for covert maneuvers? The first cracks of doubt had fractured our family's unity long before Grandma's letter arrived. The next morning, Quinn called with partial files. 2 memos from 2018 flagged confidential at Tessa's behest, outlining potential income streams, a euphemism for subdividing the estate. No legal action followed, but the intent was clear. Tessa had explored every avenue short of formal amendment, trusting that inertia and silence would let her slide unnoticed. I felt my blood run cold. This was more than a disagreement over preservation costs. It was a struggle for control over a legacy. Later that day, I took Rowan to her gymnastics lesson. As she flipped across the mat, her coach's cheer felt distant. In her bright leotard, she was a reminder of innocence and trust, qualities I feared were slipping away. When she bounded into my arms afterward, I hugged her fiercely, breathing in her scent of shampoo and sunshine. I vowed then that I would protect her inheritance of memories and values, not just dollars and walls. That evening, Tessa invited me to review a transparency ledger she claimed would clarify every fund allocation. Suspicious but unwilling to refuse, I agreed. When I arrived, she produced a tablet displaying line items with colorful charts, except the $200,000, 0 cents discretionary fund was listed under pending review, rather than final. Her tone was breezy. Just a formality, she said, tapping the screen. Once we agree, everything's clear. I looked into her eyes and saw defiance, not remorse. I closed the tablet and said, "We'll settle this through counsel. No more unilateral actions." She exhaled sharply but said nothing. That night, I consolidated every document into a binder and contacted the external counsel my father recommended. The path forward would be arduous: legal hearings, account reconciliations, potential court dates. But for the first time, I felt a measure of clarity. The first signs of trouble had been subtle emails marked urgent, margin notes scribbled in a hidden journal, but now the battleground was laid bare. I had chosen transparency and truth over deception and secrecy. The challenges ahead would test my resolve, but I was ready to fight for Grandma B's legacy. And for my daughter Rowan's future. I could feel my pulse in my throat as I slipped into Quinn Archer's downtown office late that Thursday afternoon. The glass walls reflected my determined face back at me, and behind them I saw Quinn, always so composed, poring over fine-printed spreadsheets. I stood in the doorway for a moment, steel in my spine, then knocked lightly before stepping in. "Addison," Quinn said, glancing up. Her calm veneer barely concealed a flicker of surprise. "I didn't expect you until Monday." "I need answers," I said, closing the door behind me. I laid out the file I'd compiled. Bank statements marked discretionary, email threads, and margin notes lifted from Grandma Bia's personal journals. "Why is there an unapproved transfer of $50,000 to Tessa's private account? And why did you reappraise the estate at $2 million when the last appraisal from 3 years ago valued it at $2.4 million? Quinn's eyes darted to the spreadsheet. That reappraisal was routine. Maintenance costs have skyrocketed. Roof repairs alone were nearly $250,000. I pointed to the discretionary fund line item, $200,000, 0 cents earmarked for emergency management. B explicitly forbade emergency withdrawals. This line wasn't in her final will. It's in draft notes you never formalized but Tessa used to justify a hidden fund. Quinn inhaled slowly. Tessa was worried. "When you inherited—" "Don't tell me what Grandma would have wanted," I snapped. "Tell me why you let her create this back door." Her jaw tightened. "I'm her attorney. I advised her to consider liquidity options if upkeep became untenable. She asked me to draft possible amendments, but she never signed them." I lean over the table, heart hammering. "Then why funnel the $50K? Why shadow our inheritance?" Quinn's shoulders slumped. "That was my fault. I advanced Tessa the funds out of my operating line, intended as a short-term loan against the estate so repairs could begin before next month's board meeting. I meant to notify you, but she asked me to hold off until things were finalized." I closed my eyes, recalling nights I'd lain awake worrying about the crumbling East Wing. Every creak I'd heard had been Tessa's rallying cry for quick fixes. Her solution: convert part of the old carriage house into rental units. I looked back at Quinn. "So she can pocket rental income, while I left to foot the bills under preservation restrictions." Quinn hesitated, then nodded. "She suggested it." I never should have gone along without full disclosure. A cold rage rose in me. This isn't a startup loan you can call back, it's Grandma's legacy. You two treated her D-Chook like a business joke. Quinn's eyes glistened. "You have every right to be furious. I'll correct the record, restore that fund, and reissue the estate appraisal at the proper value. I'll even recuse myself from any further discussions if you want new counsel." I let her words hang for a moment. Then I took a breath. "I want full transparency. Every memo, every email, every draft codicil, I want them all. And I want them today." She nodded, pulling a USB drive from her desk drawer. "Here are the firm's archived memos and the unsigned drafts. I'll deliver the originals to you by end of day." Relief and betrayal warred inside me. Relief that Quinn admitted the truth. Betrayal that Tessa, my stepmother, the woman I thought I could trust, had maneuvered behind our backs. I held the USB like a lifeline and left the office, pressing it into my coat pocket. On the ride home, the city blurred past. My mind raced with what I'd discovered: a clandestine transfer of $50,000, 0 cents draft amendments, never signed permissions, sought in whispers, and Tessa's plan to turn part of the estate into short-term rentals, likely netting her an extra $4,000, 0 cents a month. My chest tightened at the thought that she'd gambled with Grandma Bia's wishes for personal gain. When I stepped through the front door of the old mansion, Rowan came running, her curls bouncing. "Mom, did you win?" she asked, blinking at me with innocent hope. I hugged her tight, voices echoing in the empty hall. I laid Quinn's USB drive on the table. "You knew Quinn was drafting amendments without my consent. You knew about the loans. You've been moving money behind my back." She set down the spoon, eyes narrowing. "I did what I thought was best. Maintenance costs doubled after the last storm leaks. Rot. I couldn't wait for council meetings." "Grandma said no emergency withdrawals," I said, voice low but firm. She made it clear she wanted this estate preserved, not parceled out. Tessa turned away. She was tight. "I only wanted to protect our home." "By cutting me out?" I asked. "By funneling $50,000, 0 cents, and using draft codicils you never had the heart to finalize." Her face crumpled. "I'm sorry, Addison. I thought I was doing the right thing. I thought if the estate deteriorated, none of us would have anything." I took a step closer. "You gambled with Grandma B's legacy and with our trust. You need to undo every transaction, restore the funds, and restore the appraisal. And you need to apologize in writing, to everyone." Her throat tightened. "I will." I exhaled, feeling the tension in my chest ease slightly. The betrayal was real, but so was my resolve. I would rebuild what had been broken this time, with transparency, with respect for my grandmother's wishes, and with Rowan's future at heart. As I left the kitchen, my phone buzzed with an email notification from Quinn. "Estate fund restored, preliminary appraisal at $2.45, archived memo attached." I allowed myself a small, weary smile. The major betrayal had been exposed, and the fight was far from over. But at least now, I knew where the battlefield lay. I sank onto the edge of my bed, the weight of the day's betrayals pulling me into a dark spiral. The revelations I'd unearthed to Tessa's secret transfers, Quinn's unstamped codicils, the hidden emergency fund swirled through my mind in an endless, tormenting loop. I felt unmoored, as if the ground beneath me had cracked open, threatening to swallow every cherished memory and dream I had of preserving Grandma B's legacy. My room, once a sanctuary of soft light and familiar sketches pinned to the walls, now felt claustrophobic. I could hear the wind rattling the shutters and, in the silence between gusts, the echo of Grandma's gentle counsel. "Good things come to those who wait." But waiting had been a luxury I could no longer afford. Every moment I'd hesitated, Tessa had advanced her plans, siphoning off $50,000 from the estate's heart. The betrayal was not just financial, it was personal, intimate, a violation of trust that cut deeper than any monetary loss. Tears blurred my vision as I stared at the old family portrait above my desk. Beatrice's warm smile and Tessa's now feigned concern mocked me. I pressed my palms to my eyes, trying to banish the images of foreclosure notices and court filings that flickered behind my eyelids. My breathing hitched. A cold sweat broke out along my spine. The mansion's peeling wallpaper and drafty corridors no longer felt like a quaint relic. They felt like a tomb of broken promises. My phone buzzed with messages: my parents checking in, Quinn's firm requesting additional documents, news alerts about a sudden drop in the local housing market that threatened to devalue the estate further. I couldn't respond. I couldn't face another conversation. Instead, I turned off my phone and curled into a fetal position, clutching the sheets as if they could shield me from the storm raging inside. Time lost meaning. Minutes melted into hours as I teetered between tears and numbness. The last memory before darkness claimed me was the soft padding of Rowan's footsteps outside my door. Her small voice, "Mom? Are you okay?" cut through the haze, but I had no words to offer. I closed my eyes and prayed for relief, though relief seemed an impossible refuge. I woke to afternoon light slashing through the curtains. My throat was raw from sobbing, my cheeks were puffy and wet. For a moment, I couldn't remember where I was. Then it all crashed back. The email from Quinn confirming Tessa's partial recantation. The whispered apologies that felt hollow. The hollow ache where certainty once lived. I tried to sit up, but dizziness pulled me back down. My heart pounded so fiercely, I thought it might burst. I rolled onto my side and pressed my forehead to the mattress, willing the panic to subside. A wave of nausea washed over me, and I flinched, squeezing my eyes shut. I pictured the legal filing stacks of documents, inked signatures, color-coded spreadsheets, each one a testament to my grandmother's meticulous care. Now those had become tools in a silent coup against her final wishes. At some point, I must have drifted into a troubled sleep, because when I stirred again, the room was dim and quiet. A single beam of light slanted across the floor, illuminating dust motes like tiny indifferent stars. I dragged myself upright and pushed off the covers. My legs trembled as I stood, and for a moment I considered retreating back under the blankets. But then I heard it, the soft thud-thud of Rowan's little feet running toward my door again. She burst into the room, cheeks flushed with excitement. "Mom, look what I made," she exclaimed, extending a crumpled sheet of paper covered in rainbow scribbles. My heart twisted. Here was pure, unguarded joy, untouched by adult deceit. I knelt beside her, took the drawing, and marveled at the bright, hopeful colors she'd chosen. "It's beautiful, honey," I whispered, brushing a tear from her cheek. She beamed, oblivious to my pain. "It's our family home," she said. "See the tall tower on the right? That's where we'll hang Grandma's paintings." Her words struck me like a lifeline. In her innocent eyes, the estate was still a place of wonder, not a battleground of legal wills. I hugged her tight, inhaling the scent of her hair, strawberry shampoo, and sweat from her gymnastics lessons. In that embrace, I felt the first flicker of resolve to rise from this collapse, not just for myself, but for Rowan and for the memory of all that Grandma Bea had given us. The emotional collapse had laid me bare. I was broken, shaken, and raw. But in that rawness, I also found clarity. The pain revealed where my priorities lay, preserving not only walls and land, but the stories and love that brought them to life. If I could gather the fragments of my courage, I could face the next steps. Legal filings, financial audits, confronting Tessa in court, and rebuild piece by piece. I stood, still trembling but determined. I picked up my phone, unlocked it, and dialed Quinn Archer's office. My voice was quiet but firm. "It's time to move forward," I said. "Let's schedule the next hearing, and please, I want every document on my desk by morning." I ended the call and exhaled, feeling the tension ease slightly. That night, as Rowan slept in the room next door, I sat at my desk and opened a fresh notebook. On the first blank page, I wrote a single line: "I will not let this legacy die." Beneath it, I sketched the outline of the East Wing, imagining its restoration. My fingers still shook, but each stroke of the pencil steadied my heart. The emotional collapse had tested me at my weakest. I awoke before dawn to the insistent ping of my inbox, a single, unmarked email from Quinn Archer's office. My fingers still trembling from the previous night's breakdown, I clicked it open. Inside was a scanned, handwritten note folded into a crisp white envelope, Grandma B's handwriting, unmistakable. The header read simply, "To Addison, when you feel lost." I sank onto the edge of my bed and unfolded the letter. In flowing script, she wrote, "My dearest Addison, if you are reading this, know that I trusted you with more than bricks and mortar. You carried my laughter in your eyes the day I first taught you to paint. You have the courage to carry our story forward, even when it feels too heavy. Meet me where the willow grows, and let its branches show you the way." My breath caught. The willow, the old weeping willow tree at the far corner of the estate's rose garden, the very place where she and I had spent countless summers, brush in hand, fingers stained by emerald and gold. For a moment, the walls of my apartment melted away, replaced by that sun-dappled lawn and her gentle voice guiding me. I rose, heart thudding, and dressed quickly. By 7:15 a.m. I was driving the winding country road toward the estate, the letter clutched in my hand. The sunrise painted the sky in fiery pinks and oranges, an irony not lost on me, since the beauty seemed so at odds with my fractured home life. But as I rounded the final bend, there it stood, the willow's long tendrils tipping into the dewy grass, as though inviting me home. Under its canopy, I found an old leather-bound sketchbook, wedged between the roots. The cover was worn, but the pages inside were blank except for one sheet at the very front. I flipped it open and saw Grandma's delicate pencil lines tracing the mansion's facade, rose garden, and that very willow tree. Alongside the sketch, she jotted a simple plan. Step 1. Gather the family's creative gift, art, music, memory, to raise the seed money. Step 2. Host a community fundraiser here, in Grandma's house, to secure funds for restoration. Step 3. Celebrate the reopening with an exhibition of family and local artists. My pulse quickened. A community fundraiser, bake sale, art auction. Lived Grandma had loved organizing. Suddenly, I saw a path out of my despair, not through legal battles or cold spreadsheets, but through something I understood. Art, family, community. I drove straight to my friend Carter Winslow's studio in town, a converted warehouse where he and I had once collaborated on a mural. By 8:30 a.m., I burst in, letter and sketchbook in hand. Carter looked up from his palette, paint still drying on his fingers. "Addison Pierce in crisis mode," I announced breathlessly. "I need your help organizing a fundraiser this weekend. It's for Grandma B's house." He smiled immediately. Anything for B. He'd known my grandmother too. "What's the vision?" I showed him the sketch and the plan. His eyes lit up. "We could call it Roots and Wings, a celebration of art and community. We'll sell event tickets at $25.00 right off the top. Then 50% of our auction proceeds go directly to the restoration fund." We spent the next 2 hours mapping logistics, catering quotes, estimate $3,000, 0 cents for local bakeries and food trucks, venue rentals, lawn tent at $1,200, 0 cents, sound equipment $600, 0 cents, printing and promotion $400, 0 cents, total upfront costs $6,000, 0 cents, target fundraiser revenue at least $12,000, 0 cents covering expenses and netting $6,000, 0 cents for structural repairs. As Carter and I finalized the budget, I felt a spark of hope ignite. For the first time since Quinn's affidavit and Tessa's betrayal, I envisioned something that honored Grandma's creative spirit rather than judging every decision in legalese. Next, I contacted Quinn to secure permission to host the event on the estate grounds. She responded within the hour with an enthusiastic "Go for it, Grandma would be thrilled." The weight on my shoulders eased a fraction. I wasn't alone. That afternoon, I called Clara Bennett, who graciously agreed to serve as a silent partner, overseeing the fundraising account, ensuring every dollar raised went to restoration, no discretionary skimming allowed. With Carter's help, I drafted invitations and posted save-the-date flyers at local galleries and cafes, leveraging Grandma B's network of artisans. When I hung up the phone, I realized how far I'd come from that hollow night of tears and panic. Sitting at my desk, I looked at Rowan's artwork taped to the wall, her crayon rendition of Grandma's Willow, and felt a surge of determination. This fundraiser would do more than raise money, it would reknit the frayed bonds of our family and community, reminding me why Grandma had entrusted this legacy to me. By dusk, I'd sold 50 early bird tickets at $20.00 each, committed 3 local bands to play for tips, and secured a donation of 20 canvas panels from the art store where Rowan's drawings had first sold for $5.00 apiece. I tallied the projected revenue: ticket sales $4,000.00, art auction conservative estimate $3,000.00, tips and donation $1,000.00, enough to cover expenses and still leave a $2,000.00 surplus. As I closed my ledger, I pressed my palm against the sketchbook's willow drawing, whispering, "Thank you, Grandma. I understand now." The spark she'd kindled in that morning letter wasn't just hope, it was a plan of action rooted in everything she had taught me: creativity, community, and unwavering love. For the first time in weeks, I went to sleep feeling ready. The recovery had begun. I stood in the grand foyer of Beatrice's old mansion 3 days later, flanked by Quinn Archer and Carter Winslow, clutching the binder of evidence I'd demanded. Sunlight slanted through the stained glass windows, illuminating motes of dust that danced like motes of truth now laid bare. Quinn had called a special estate council meeting to turn the tables, and Carter was here to document and live-stream our session for the community fundraiser's transparency pledge. I inhaled deeply, bracing myself. Today, I would reclaim my grandmother's legacy. "Thank you both for coming," I began, voice steady despite the tremor of adrenaline. Quinn gave me a small nod. Carter raised his camera. "We're here to resolve the unauthorized transfers, finalize the true estate valuation, and establish a clear path forward that honors Grandma B's wishes." I opened the binder to the first page. A spreadsheet detailing a $50,000.00 transfer into Tessa's personal account last month, flagged in red and annotated in Grandma's own handwriting: "No loans." Quinn stepped up. "I apologize again for my lapse in protocol," she said, her tone measured. She tapped at her tablet and projected a revised balance sheet onto the ornate mirror behind us. The estate's true valuation, based on Claudia Mayers's independent appraisal, stood at $2,450,000.00. Not the $2,000,000.00 Tessa had quietly insisted on. "We've restored the emergency fund line item to zero, reversed the $50K transfer, and adjusted the property valuation. The estate's net worth is now $2,450,000.00, with a $0.00 discretionary fund." Murmurs rippled through the small in-person audience of family members and invited neighbors. Miles Pierce, my cousin and co-heir, leaned forward. "So the numbers stand as Grandma intended?" he asked. "No hidden clauses?" "No hidden clauses," I confirmed, closing the binder for emphasis. And today we'll sign a binding amendment ratifying these figures, witnessed by Clara Bennett as our neutral counsel. Clara, sitting near the corner, rose and adjusted her glasses. "I'm ready," she said, passing me a sheaf of crisp pages. As Quinn distributed copies of the amendment, Carter switched to a live shot of our group. I could hear his quiet whisper into the mic. 200 viewers and counting. Good public accountability was our strongest ally. I took the pen first, placing it on the amendment's signature line. My hand was steady. As I wrote Addison Pierce, I felt a surge of vindication. No more whispered memos, no more shadow funds. Next came Quinn's signature. Quinn Archer, attorney at law, followed by Miles's, and then Lydia and Elias Pierce's, confirming the family's unified front. Claire's notary stamp clicked onto the page last, sealing our accord. But I wasn't done. I flipped to a second exhibit, the weekend fundraiser budget we'd sketched under the willow's canopy. Organizer Carter had projected the line items: $6,000, 0 cents, in upfront costs, projected $12,000, 0 cents in gross revenue. Roots and Wings were set to yield a $6,000, 0 cents, net, earmarked directly for the painting gallery and roof repair. I addressed the audience. This fundraiser is more than an event. It's our public declaration that Grandma B's legacy belongs to the community she loved. At that moment, the library doors creaked open and Tessa Pierce entered, her face pale but determined. A hush fell. I'd invited her to witness our transparent process, knowing it would pressure her to acknowledge her missteps. She approached the table, clutching a folded letter. "Addison," she said softly, voice wavering, "I want to undo what I did." She slid her own signed statement across the table, a formal admission of the unauthorized transfer, plus a pledge to contribute an additional $10,000, 0 cents, to the restoration fund from her own savings. "I realize now is trying to protect the house the only way I knew how," she added, eyes glistening. "But your grandmother wanted honesty first." My heart clenched. This was the turning of. With all signatures collected, Quinn summarized next steps: ordering the restoration permits, scheduling the roof contractors, and transferring the event's net proceeds into a segregated account overseen by Clara. By next Friday, she pledged, you'll have an updated estate ledger reflecting these corrections, and the fundraiser fund secured in trust. I exhaled, feeling the tension lift. The battleground had shifted from clandestine drafts and secret wire transfers to open disclosures and collective commitment. The legal weapons Tessa and Quinn had once wielded against me were now tools for restoration. Thanks to our decisive meeting. Outside, the spring breeze carried the scent of budding roses, a reminder that growth can follow upheaval. I approached the window and saw Rowan waving from the lawn, her face lit with pride. I waved back, tears of relief pricking my eyes. Today we had honored Grandma B's vision, a legacy preserved not by hidden agendas, but by shared purpose. Before leaving, I turned to Miles. "Thank you for standing with me," I said. He clasped my shoulder. "Always," he replied. Then to Carter, "Get ready for Roots and Wings. We've got a party to plan and a house to restore." As we filed out of the foyer, binder in hand, I felt the true weight of responsibility settle into my shoulders, not as a burden, but as an honor. We had turned the tables on betrayal, rewriting the estate's narrative in broad daylight. The next chapter would be built on transparency, community, and the same creative spirit Grandma B instilled in us, proof that even the deepest wounds can yield new growth when faced head-on. I've always admired Miles's quiet determination. While I was consumed by legal briefs and restoration budgets, he pursued his passion with calm intensity. In his junior year of high school, Miles entered the National Young Artist Scholarship Competition and won a $10,000 0 cents award for his painting Silent Courtyard, a piece inspired by the sunlit courtyard of Grandma B's workshop. He told me he planned to save that scholarship for art school, but when he learned about our mounting repair cost, roof leaks, foundation cracks, he approached me early one morning with a crisp check folded in his sketchbook. "This is for the house," he said, his voice steady before dawn's first light. I remember the soft rustle of paper echoing down the hallway as he slipped the earnings onto my desk. He refused to take no for an answer, insisting, "Use it where it matters most." His gift covered half the down payment for our urgent roofing permit, saving us from another delay. Over the next week, I watched him juggle evening art classes, debate club meetings, and volunteer shifts at the local community center. One afternoon, I found him in the attic, carefully cataloging Grandma B's old photograph albums in a leather-bound journal. He annotated dates, sketched faded corners, and wrote brief notes about each memory. "These moments deserve the same care as any painting," he explained without looking up. His commitment wasn't just to money or masonry. It was to preserving our family's story, stitch by stitch. During the Roots and Wings fundraiser, I saw Miles transform from a background observer into a confident host, greeting artists, organizing silent auction bids, and proudly introducing guests to his own miniature charcoal sketches of the mansion. His $10,000 0 cents scholarship had been the spark now. His leadership fueled community support and deepened our family's bonds. That evening, as we counted donations under the willow tree, I asked him why he'd given up his scholarship so willingly. Miles paused, watching sunset light dance across the rose garden. "Grandma always said art thrives when shared," he replied softly. "This house, these memories, they belong to more than one person." In his words, I heard B's nurturing voice, urging generosity and unity. Miles's side story became more than a footnote. It was a guiding thread. His quiet resolve reminded me that legacy is woven from many hands, and every act of selfless devotion shapes the tapestry of our shared history. The courtroom felt colder than any winter wind as I stepped inside, the polished mahogany benches gleaming under harsh overhead lights. Reporters' lenses flickered like distant stars, casting intermittent shadows across Tessa's pale face. This was the culmination of weeks of preparation, the downfall of the person who had betrayed our family's trust. Addison Pierce sat front and center, my heart steady but vigilant. Judge Harmon called the session to order. The prosecutor, Ms. Langley, rose and delivered the charges with clinical precision. Unauthorized transfer of $50,000, 0 cents in estate funds, breach of fiduciary duty, and attempted will manipulation via unofficial codicil drafts. She displayed Exhibitor B, the 2012 margin note in Grandma B's handwriting that explicitly forbade any emergency loans. Each piece of evidence felt like a nail hammered into the coffin of Tessa's defense. When it was my turn, I rose and squared my shoulders. "My grandmother," I began, my voice resonant, entrusted me with more than assets. She entrusted me with her legacy of creativity, transparency, and love. But the defendant turned that trust into her personal slush fund. I recounted the night I discovered Quinn Archer's discretionary line item, the rage and heartbreak of realizing my stepmother's duplicity, and the betrayal of my daughter Rowan's future. As I spoke, I saw heads nodding in the jury box. The defense attorney attempted to salvage Tessa's reputation, painting her actions as misguided but well-intentioned. He argued that rising maintenance costs, roof repairs, estimated at $212,000, 0 cents, had driven her to seek quick solutions. But under cross-examination, Tessa admitted she had never sought my consent and could offer no signed amendment to justify the transfer. Her tears and halting apologies only underscored her opportunism. Ms. Langley's closing argument was impassioned. Good intentions do not absolve misconduct. Miss Pierce's grandmother's final wishes were clear. Attempts to circumvent them, however well-intentioned, constitute a serious breach of trust. She asked the jury for full restitution of the diverted funds, a 5% penalty on the $2,450,000 estate, totaling $122,500, and immediate removal of Tessa's oversight privileges. We barely had time for coffee before the jury returned. Foreperson Jacob stood and delivered the verdict in measured tones. Guilty on all counts. A collective gasp rippled through the gallery. Tessa's face crumpled. She covered her mouth, shoulders shaking. Judge Harmon scheduled formal sentencing for Monday but imposed immediate restitution. Tessa was to return $50,000 plus the $122,500 penalty to a court-Detroit trust, totaling $172,500 within 7 days. He also stripped her of any role in estate management and barred her from future access to account records. Relief and sorrow collided within me. I watched bailiffs escort Tessa into a private holding area. She paused, turned, and mouthed through tears, "I'm sorry." In that moment, I felt pity for the woman she had become, even as I recognized the necessity of accountability. Outside the courthouse, Carter live-streamed our emergence to hundreds of supporters. Miles gripped my hand, his 17-year-old face solemn yet proud. "You did it." Rowan, perched on my shoulders, waved a crayon sketch of the willow tree. "We won, Mom," she beamed. I hugged her fiercely, grateful that justice had secured not only fair treatment, but also the future we had fought so hard to protect. In the days that followed, local news outlets highlighted the case as a warning: how good intentions can morph into self-serving schemes when transparency is abandoned. The community rallied behind us. Neighbors volunteered to help with restoration. Artists pledged free work for the upcoming Roots and Wings fundraiser, and Clara Bennett oversaw donation accounts to ensure zero misappropriation. Tessa, facing public scrutiny, issued a formal apology to the family, and agreed to a structured restitution plan, paying back the remainder of the penalty in monthly installments. She entered ethics counseling and volunteer work at the local historical society, hoping to rebuild her reputation. The estate's board, at my urging, adopted new governance policies requiring unanimous heirs' signatures for any financial decisions. One afternoon, I found Tessa in the rose garden, weeping beneath the weeping willow. I approached quietly and laid a hand on her shoulder. She looked up, eyes red. "I lost my way," she admitted. "But I want to make this right." I nodded and offered her a copy of Grandma B's original will, signed and witnessed, saying simply, "Start here." Weeks later, as I watched roofers replace damaged beams and painters restore peeling stucco, I realized the antagonist's downfall had done more than punish wrongdoing. It reaffirmed our shared values. Under the willow's swaying branches, I closed my eyes and heard Grandma B's gentle voice. "Truth and love always endure." The estate's stones were mended, its finances secured, and its legacy, our legacy, was stronger than ever. I stood in the restored foyer, sunlight streaming through the refurbished stained glass windows as guests milled about beneath crystal chandeliers. The Roots and Wings fundraiser was in full swing, and the energy crackled with creativity and community spirit. Painters, sculptors, and musicians had gathered to honor Grandma Beatrice's memory, their work displayed on easels and pedestals throughout the hall. Addison Pierce felt a profound sense of completion ripple through me. What had begun as a harrowing legal battle had transformed into a celebration of art, family, and legacy. As the first violinist struck the opening chords of her piece, I raised my glass of sparkling cider. "Thank you all," I called out, voice steady but charged with emotion. "Today we stand together not only to restore these walls, but to rekindle the spirit that built them." The crowd cheered, and I gestured toward the West Gallery, where Rowan stood beside her own display, a series of watercolor sketches of the mansion's architectural details. Her proud smile and flushed cheeks reminded me why every fight, every moment of doubt, had been worth it. In the weeks since the court ruling and Tessa's restitution, the estate's finances had stabilized. The restored ledger confirmed a net worth of $2,450,000, 0 cents, with zero discretionary fund, just as Grandma B had intended. The $6,000, 0 cents, raised at Roots and Wings, covered our initial restoration deposit, and additional pledges from neighbors and local businesses promised to fill the remaining gaps. Carter's livestream drew nearly 500 viewers, and online donations continued to trickle in. Under Clara Bennett's careful oversight, every dollar was traceable and protected from covert amendments. Transparency had become our cornerstone. That evening, as the event wound down and the last guests drifted out, I walked with Quinn Archer through the newly repaired East Wing. Fresh paint gleamed on the walls, and the floorboards creaked slightly, still settling into their restored places. Quinn paused and looked at me, her expression a mix of relief and respect. "Addison, you turned a potential disaster into a triumph of community," she said softly. "Your grandmother would be proud." We reached the rose garden under the weeping willow, its tendrils brushing the dew-damp grass like a gentle blessing. I knelt and placed my hand on its trunk, feeling its weathered strength. "We did this," I whispered. "All of us." Over the next few days, I reflected on the journey that had brought me here. The major betrayal had cut deep, and my emotional collapse had left me adrift. Yet each step, discovering Grandma's hidden letters, convening the family council, turning the tables on Tessa, and rallying the community had taught me vital lessons about trust, resilience, and vision. Lesson 1. Legacy is a living tapestry. Legacy isn't just an estate, it's a weave of stories. Grandma Beatrice's paintings, my daughter's watercolors, and Miles's scholarship work all became threads in something far greater than bricks and mortar. By honoring each contributor, we restored not only a building but our shared identity. Lesson 2. Transparency trumps secrecy. The shadows cast by Tessa's unauthorized transfers might have gone unnoticed if I hadn't insisted on full disclosure. Once every hidden memo and margin note was revealed, the path forward became clear. Our new governance policies now require unanimous heir signatures for any financial decision, ensuring that no future heir or attorney can manipulate the estate without consensus. Lesson 3. Community is the heart of preservation. Artisans, neighbors, and family friends rallied not just with money but with time, talent, and belief in Grandma's vision. Stewardship is a communal act. By inviting others to contribute, I honored her conviction that art is a bridge between past and future. Lesson 4. Forgiveness catalyzes healing. When Tessa offered her formal apology and pledged additional restitution, I recognized that holding on to bitterness would only poison my heart and the estate. By accepting her apology, I reclaimed my own peace and allowed the family to heal. Trust, once broken, can be rebuilt through genuine remorse and accountability. The morning after the fundraiser, I held Rowan close as she recounted the evening's highlights: the soaring cello solo, the local baker's signature blueberry scones, and the standing ovation for her sketches. "Mom," she said, eyes bright beyond her years, "we made her proud." I kissed her forehead. "Yes, sweetheart, we did." That afternoon, I met Miles in the workshop where he had repurposed one of Grandma's old ceramic molds into a commemorative plaque. He handed me the finished piece: a willow tree encircled by intertwined hands, each bearing a tiny painted leaf. "One leaf for each person who helped," he explained. I traced the delicate branches. "Perfect," I said. "Just like Grandma wanted." Before dusk, I wandered the silent rooms of the mansion, imagining daily life restored. Library corners filled with visiting scholars, the parlor hosting poetry readings, and the sunroom echoing with long-lost laughter. In the garden, the willow stood sentinel, whispering its wild grace in the breeze. In the years ahead, I plan to expand Roots and Wings into an annual festival, establish the Addison Pierce Scholarship for young artists, and open the mansion's doors for educational tours. Each initiative will carry forward the lessons we learned: that safeguarding a legacy requires vigilance, that healing emerges from honesty, and that the truest treasures are the relationships we forge along the way. As the sun set behind the willow and the last rose petals drifted to the grass, I placed my hand on the sketchbook I'd discovered beneath those roots. The first lines were blank, waiting for new stories. I closed my eyes and heard Grandma B's voice. "Good things come to those who wait." Now, I understood good things also come to those who fight, forgive, and believe.